Hey everyone, welcome to this Quick Start Basics class number 6. Attend a weekly presentation. That's of the 10 Core Basics. We are super excited for you to join us tonight, to be here with you. Tonight our goal is to equip and empower and entertain and educate you on the basics of building your business. Our goal of this school is to teach you how to build strong and profitable businesses. Before we get started, before we do introductions, grab a pen and paper so we can let you know what's coming up. Noon Eastern time every Monday through Friday, weekdays, is our MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. That's a Facebook Live on that page, on that Facebook group, the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. Of course, you can request membership there if you haven't already to get free book notices, replays, and everything. People just love those. Adrian, if you're on, Adrian, one of our members said, I have to get my daily, MLM lunchtime leadership shows, just like vitamins and exercise. I have to get it daily. So that tickled me a lot. People are getting good results with it. So that's all free lunchtime. You can bring people, tag people, share it, all that. Also, Tuesday, Facebook Live is a training at 3 p.m. every Eastern time, every Tuesday. So it's one of the principles of the 10 Core that we like to teach and go deep into. Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, is our MLM Leadership University. And right now we are just beginning. This is a gift for people in the Quick Start Basics program. And this coming Wednesday, we are beginning a new book, How to Become a Person of Influence. And we're going to be preparing, you can prepare for that by reading just 2 chapters, chapters 1 and 2 this time. And we will go over that. As you heard, this past weekend in Indianapolis was the Breakthrough Team Building Summit. And it was just a smashing success. People loved it. Probably going to be getting out some video testimonials about that. And now we're preparing and looking forward to the next one on January 25th to 27th in Indianapolis. And this will be the, Jeff, could you say the title of that one again? The Breakthrough Enterprise?
Yeah, so this next one is going to be launch. It'll be Free Enterprise Summit. So Free Enterprise, all about building a business, owning a business, identifying yourself as a business owner.
Thank you. Awesome. So those tickets are actually on sale through tonight, or on discount through tonight, and you can find them on my page, Bess McCarty page, and also you can find all the replays. In the last few days I've been posting every single replay from that whole event. So it's like getting a live stream ticket that you get replays for free, and you can go and watch all the different sections that are just fascinating. I think you will love them. And at the bottom of every one, you can see where you can find the ticket for the next one, for the discount ticket through tonight. So we'd sure love to have you there. So introductions. We are Bess McCarty, coach for network marketers and shrink of MLM, and Jeffrey David Gamble of My Leadership Network, partnering to bring you this generic training, the Quick Start Basics for Network Marketers, with the 10 Core Commitments, every Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here. Our purpose is to help people grow, to educate, empower, and equip entrepreneurs, and create independent servant leaders. We really want to raise the bar in this profession. Now, I was, my story, real briefly, so shy as a kid, I had to learn to overcome that in my life and also in my network marketing business. So I definitely have done a lot of personal growth work my whole lifetime and help network marketers to do that now. I became a body-mind therapist and a holistic health practitioner for my own personal growth and to help others. So I can definitely, one of my specialties is identifying where people get stuck and helping them past that, and also to have breakthroughs very similar to Tony Robbins. Now, Jeff has personally recruited over 500 people frontline, built 2 teams of over 5,000 people, and his teams have produced over $10 million in sales. I don't know if you know this about Jeff, but he teaches some things that are a bit different from anything that I've ever heard before teach in network marketing. And you can, for example, He teaches to do 10 presentations, like when you sign up a new recruit, to teach 10 new presentations first rather than 100, because that's to break it down for people, and they get to have quick success fast and not be so inundated by looking at 100. You always hear make a list of 100, right? So he recommends something a little bit different than that. Also, his favor script is really what opened my eyes to the differences in how he works. Hey, can I ask you a favor? I want to let you know what I do in case you run across the right person. You can refer them to me. Is this a good time? So that's a genius script in so many ways because it's indirect, works with all 4 personalities, very duplicatable. A third thing that he teaches that's real different is to do the 10-minute presentation as a first exposure rather than a video, even though he was explaining in Indianapolis during one of his talks that the companies like that, sending people to a video first because that's faster and easier, but it doesn't really keep people long-term, and it doesn't really work out long-term. And 70% of people do not watch the video. So these are just some of the really unique things that you get with Jeff as a teacher, and some of the many reasons that I was drawn into teaching together with him and asked him originally to help in the MLM Millionaire Club school for my school for network marketers I've run for over 10 years. So these are just some of the really special things that you don't find taught anywhere else, and I'm real happy that we can present this here. This generic training is compatible with your company, but if you find any differences, then definitely follow your company if it's good training and teaching. This is for all levels. This is network marketers starting or been in a long time. We have both in here tonight. Network marketers who are moving quite well or who are stuck, who want to focus on customers or recruits or leadership. This training helps you to build a team and lay a good foundation and make a lot of money if you want to, if you're willing to do the work and put in the time. This is all the important stuff that you need to know and to pass on to your recruits. This group is where you connect with people, interact, have fun, and we help you to stay on track. The 10 core commitments are getting started right, be here a year from now, personal development, market daily, present daily, attend a weekly presentation, which we're covering deeply tonight, attend a weekly core training, which you're on tonight. This is it. The quick start basis is that weekly core training. And number 8, attend a monthly regional. Number 9, attend all company conventions. Number 10, a monthly action plan. I didn't number them, but I think you got the 10. This includes mindset and skills, as you could tell, including the 7 skills that Eric Worre teaches, which is find people, invite, present, follow up, sign them up, train them, and getting to events. Now, why do we drill on the basics so much? Why do we drill and repeat? We recommend that you attend these for a year and that you repeat this course 4 times. And when you do, we have a certificate for you each time, a certificate of completion, being either here or watching the replays. So why do we drill on the basics so much and repeat them and repeat them? One of our wonderful speakers in Indianapolis last week, and James Kelly, who's an executive director of his company, he says, if you get a hot idea, take a cold shower, meaning resist following the bright, shiny objects, or you think you can reinvent something or redo it, because these 10 core basics have been proven for decades to work. We're bringing you the very, very best that we know of. So James said, if you get a hot idea, take a cold shower, and instead of that hot new idea, or being tempted to follow some hot new idea that's out there, and say, oh, this will be a shortcut. I won't have to talk to people. This will get me people online and all that stuff. He said, instead of doing that, get a large number of people to do a few simple things consistently over time. And you've heard this maybe from Eric Worre and the top earners. Get a large number of people to do a few simple things consistently over time. That's what we're doing here. That's the 10 core basics. Every time I hear them, I get a deeper level of them. So keep track of which ones you attend, including the replays, let me know when you have completed all 10, we have an award certificate for you. We've given out already 6 of them for the first level, and when those people have completed the next level, we have a second certificate for you, and so on till there's 4 altogether that represent your study for a year. Okay, Jeff, I think we're ready for the 10 core overview, and then we'll go into the the number 6 for tonight, and we'll go about 90 minutes minus my introduction, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers afterwards that will not be recorded. So if a question comes up for you, make a little note of it, or a takeaway, or something that you want to share, make a note, and there will be time for that afterwards.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
I have 9:15. Is that what you got?
Yep.
Okay. So, guys, we're going to do a quick overview of the 10 core. And Bess mentioned something. We recommend being in a year. Actually, we recommend being in permanently. Jeff Olson told me, he's like, if you plan on doing this, you're never leaving the weekly core training. You're never leaving the basics. The minute you leave the basics and think you know everything, you're done. So I still attend this. I still listen to one of the guys that showed me this. I still listen to his CD, and it's been a decade. And I'll tell you, I still hear things. I still hear things that I didn't know. I still hear things that I need reminded of. And the reason being is we all get comfortable, and we all think we know. Bess did make, some recommendations on things that I've done. And here's basically what my mentors taught me. They said, look, go out and build it our way first. And build it our way first. So I went out and did that. I went out and built it their way. And they said, once you get to this level, you can have ideas, and we'll listen to you. We'll open that up to a discussion. But until you get to this level, I don't want to hear anything, and I really don't have any interest in listening to you at all because you have no proof in what you think. Your thoughts are basically the reason why you're making the amount of money you're making right now, and if you're not making at least this much or at this level, we're not going to sit down and have these conversations with you about what you think. Build it our way first and get to this level. I didn't like that because I'm really kind of a take control person. And I'll be real honest, I tried to do it, when I say my way, I tried to do it a way I thought would work in the very beginning. This was before I had built, before I followed what they said to do. I then went out and followed what they said to do, and I ran into some roadblocks, and I managed to piece it together and figure it out, and I got to that level in the company. So then I had, these genius thought-up ideas, and here's what my mentor said. He's like, great, start another group. Start another group that has nothing to do with your other groups. Do not tell them what you're doing, and go prove it. Go prove it. Can you make that work? He's like, if you can make it work and make it outgrow the rest of your team, then we'll have a conversation. Then you have to make sure that it grows on different, and there was these different rules to be able to grow something. And that's where I learned, the lessons of the 5. These are the 5 things that make things duplicate. And he's like, if you can't follow, if it doesn't fit with these 5 lessons, you don't have a good idea at all. I was like, okay, well, what are those 5 lessons? Because he kept talking about these lessons, and I was like, well, what are they? And he's like, number 1, it has to work instantly. So if you take any longer than 45 minutes to train somebody, you're done. You're done. It won't duplicate. So you can just set a timer on your watch every time you're going to go do anything or teach anybody anything in the industry, and if it's going to take longer than 45 minutes for them to get started, learning what you're doing, then it's not going to work. And that's why I always suggested people to read the 15-minute presentation. That was my whole training. I said, read this to me. And they said, well, what about this, and what about my story, and what about testimonials? I said, you don't need any of that crap. I said, if you can't clearly tell me what you're in and doing, I wouldn't follow you anyway. Doesn't that make sense? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, you're trying to recruit me to the team, right? And, in this example that I was having, teaching, training. They said, yeah. And I said, well, if you can't clearly tell me what you're doing, I'm not going to follow you. Just like if you said, hey, I really want to take this trip and you can't tell me where we're going, I'm not going to get in the car with you. Does that make sense? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, why would it be any different in a business? It's actually more important to be clear. It's more important to be concise. It's more important to be confident in a business than it is just taking a trip. You wouldn't drive over to my house and say, get in. I said, what are we doing? Just get in. You know, certain friends of mine, I wouldn't get in their car even if they told me where they're going, because sometimes they don't tell me the truth, you know, let alone somebody that's like, get in. I'm not telling you anything until, you know, that just didn't work. So, number one, it must work instantly. Number two, it must work 10 levels in depth. 10 levels down, whatever I taught, watch this, whatever I taught the guy at the top, the guy at the bottom has to be able to repeat and say the exact same thing. And until the guy at the bottom of the leg is saying the same thing at the top of the leg, we don't have duplication. 3, it must work with people you don't know. So if it only works under these terms where, you know, you have this great relationship with people, well, and that's the problem when you first get started, you're going to think with a set of eyeballs, with a set of ears, with a set of instructions that's your surrounding. If you haven't built something across the country, if you haven't built something into a different culture, if you haven't built something into a different language, if you haven't even built outside of your own household before, you're not going to have the right philosophy, you're not going to have the right programming to even make that decision yet. You're going to learn that by being out in the field, as my friends say. You're going to learn that walking through the minefield and you know, and getting blown up and getting shrapnel and, you know, and running into roadblocks. By the way, a lot of the guys that I worked with are military, so if I use a lot of like military references, it's not because I was military and it's not because I'm trying to be mean, it's just they were all military, so like all these guys that trained me. So a lot of times people are like, you know, you use a lot of this blowing up, shooting, this, that, and that. I said, hey, I was just trained that way, so forgive me. That's the reason I use it, not to, you know, say that that's the right way to do it or influence anybody. Number 4, it must work 1,000 miles away. So whatever you teach, watch this. So whatever you teach not only has to work with a person you can get together with and sit down and have coffee, but you have to teach it over the phone. That's why it was real easy to send somebody a flip book and say, and this is my flip book for my leadership network when I'm trying to explain to a new network marketer what I was doing and what it was about. This is what I was sitting down and showing. See, I used the exact same methods regardless if I was building a traditional business or a direct sales business, because what I did is I found that it worked in both scenarios. Why? Because you can change the product, you can change the company, and you can change the comp plan, but the principle remains the same. Number 5, it must work when an amateur does it to a professional and vice versa. Meaning, I can give this to the CEO of a company, and he can read this to somebody, and I can turn around and give it to an 18-year-old that just joined the business, that doesn't know anything about business at all, and he can read it to his dad who's a CEO, and the information will transfer as long as somebody just reads it. So those were the rules of duplication, and that's what I learned early on in the business. You know, they said, hey, look, follow this stuff. Now, I was in a couple different companies, and I got to work with a couple different people. One of the guys I worked with had over 1 million people on his team. In fact, he had an organization, a single leg of his business that had 1.4 million people on that team. He's nationally ranked. You can look up his numbers. And we're trying to stay away from names and company names and this, that, and the other thing, so I'm not going to mention any of that. But his rank in his company is he's at the top of his company, and he's helped a lot of people get up to the top, but his total income, net income from that company's commissions, this is just commissions. This isn't ownership in the company. This isn't buying other things like banks, hotels. He owns 50 other companies, but just his commission inside of network marketing is over $450 million. Over $450 million. He started with one company. He's never done any other network marketing direct sales company, only one. And he had 2.5, 3 million people on his team. I think 3 million was the top number I've heard that he had on his team. But he had a single leg of his business that was 1.4 million people. People. There are companies, entire histories, that have never had that many people in their company, even with attrition. He had them at one time. So that's where I got part of this. Another part of this I got from a guy who also built an organization of over 1 million people, and it still exists in Europe today, even though he left that company 25 years ago. And then, you know, just recently, I say recently within the last 10 years, I got to work with a guy who became a millionaire 5 different times in 5 different companies in a period of 11 years. So in 11 years, and basically every 2 years, this guy built to the top, made $1 million, met the owners, and was like, I don't like what's going on here. I don't like the people. He saw the very ugly side of direct sales, and there is ugly sides of direct sales. I'm really transparent here. I'm not trying to fool anybody. I just want people to know how this works and what goes on, so that way the smoke and mirrors is removed and you know what it actually takes to build this. And if you're going to spend money and you're going to spend time and you're going to take away, because you usually have to take away from family, you have to take away from other things you want to do, you have to take away money that you'd be saving or investing or buying crap, or, you know, people buy stuff and do crazy things with money. But I want you to spend it where it makes sense, and I don't want you to waste time and money. That's my overall goal. And the reason I'm, you know, strong about that is I wasted a bunch of time and money and didn't really have anybody guiding me in the very beginning. So I spent 10 years basically rowing down the river, you know, not realizing that there was a giant waterfall every, you know, couple hundred feet. And, you know, I went down and almost drowned and then, you know, popped back up and was like, what just happened? And figured it out. And I did that multiple times over 10 years. And finally, I followed some directions and I got some people skills. That was one of the big things. I got some people skills. I got some good philosophies. I followed directions. I built very, very quickly in a company once I got that. And I got to that level, and then I started, you know, I took a leg and started building with it. And I said, I think I know what to do. I'm going to try this. And I tried it, and that single leg outproduced the entire rest of my organization combined. And I said, oh, I found something. And then I realized I went out to California, and I grabbed a guy that I had permission to do this. Don't do this without permission. I grabbed a guy on my uplines team. He said, teach this to this guy. So I talked to that guy, and then that guy started out producing everybody. And he's like, okay, now I kind of see what you're talking about, and it's working. So now we'll adopt more of it. Now, 10 years ago, and Bess can, you know, shake her head and actually confirm this. 10 years ago, I realized that people weren't answering their phone because my brother 10 years ago was 21 years old. And what we realized is I kept hearing my mom go, he's not answering his phone. He never, even if I leave him a message, he doesn't listen to it. He doesn't answer his phone. He doesn't answer his phone. And I'm like, well, you need to text him. I'm like, if you just text him what you want to say, he's going to read it instantly, and then he'll get back with you. And my mom's like, yeah, but you know, my mom, which is now 65, she was 55 then, she was from the generation where you picked up the phone and called. And I said, I don't care what you like. I don't care how you feel. If you want to have a conversation with him, he's not going to change for you. You're going to have to change for him. That's the only way it's going to work. Now, was I brilliant? No, I just saw kind of what was going on. I'm like, at 21, I'm not listening either. So I'm like, if you want to have a conversation, this is how to communicate with him. Do you want to communicate or do you not? That's the real question. So she started doing this, and that's where the text messaging actually came from. I realized, I was like, you know what, there's a whole new generation, and that's how they're going to do it. So if I want to bring these kids on my team, if I want these new people on my team, I have to use what they're using to be able to contact, because that's how they're communicating. So that's how I started doing it. I started sending text messages a decade ago. And not only did my upline think I was crazy, but my upline thought I was crazy and actually called into the organization and told everyone to stop doing it after I recruited a kid who recruited 9 people his first 24 hours in the business. In his first month, I think he made close to $1,800 his first month in the business, and he never talked to anybody. It was all through text messaging. And I realized right there what we had a hold of. And all of a sudden, a decade later, Eric Worre's like, the biggest secret in network marketing in the last 50 years. He's like, we realized we should text message people. And I'm like, genius. I actually had people, when he announced that at that meeting, I had friends in the room, and they all text me, and they're like, dude, you taught this to me 7, 8 years ago. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And that was another realization that I should be actually teaching this stuff. I had some friends 10 years ago say, you know, you really need to start teaching some of the stuff that you're, and I just didn't think that I had that background to be able to do that. And the more people I talked to, the more they said, you should really start teaching this. So, number one, get people started right. It's got to be simple. It's got to be easy. It's got to be duplicatable. It's got to work 10 levels below you. It's got to work with people you don't know. So what I found is when I sit somebody down, I say, hey, let's make a list of 10 people, and our objective is to basically just read it. Nothing fancy. We just want to read the information. We want to tell 10 people about what you do. So here's how you contact them. Do me a favor. I want to tell you about what I'm working on outside of my normal job, outside of my normal work, outside of school, outside of whatever you're doing, outside of being sitting at home watching TV. I want to tell you about what I'm doing. So if you happen to run across the right person, you can refer them to me. That's what I taught people to do. And I said, you can text. Actually, in the beginning, I didn't say text message. I said call them. And it was actually one of my friends that text messaged somebody that, and I realized it actually worked better when you text messaged. And I was like, wow. And he text messaged the whole thing, not like each piece. He says, hey, I need a huge favor. I ran into something that I started working on with a friend of mine. That's how he said it. I ran into something that I started working on with a friend of mine, and I want to tell you what we're doing. So if you run into the right person, you can refer them to us. And I read his text message, and I was like, so what do you respond back? Well, he said, what was it? And I said, let me look at your phone. And I looked through all the responses because he had sent us like 400 people. And I'm like, you know what? You just gave me a really good training because you talked to so many people. By the way, if you don't know this about, I have friends that took statistics class, and I actually picked up his book one day and read part of it. A lot of my education is basically dumb luck rather than by design. But I actually picked up his statistics book, and I found out that when statistics go out, if you've polled 1,500 people or you've polled 150,000 people, there's a 3% margin of error regardless of how many more people you contact. I mean, you can look that up. I verified it on Wikipedia, you know, after I had said it for years. There's about a 3% margin of error once you've polled 1,500 people. Well, he had talked to like 400, so I'm like, I'm going to get a pretty good idea here of what responses we're going to get back. And here's what I heard. What company? What is it? How does it work? How long have you been doing it? Where is it located? There were only about 5 responses. Here's what I didn't hear. Oh, my gosh, did you get into a pyramid? Is this one of those scam things? Is this one of those things where you get in at the top and everybody else has to be in underneath you and you make money off of everybody? Is this like one of those vacuum things where, you know, you suck and they suck too? You know, and I heard all those responses, but I was looking through all the responses and I'm like, not once did he get any of those questions. And I was like, in general, about 80% of the responses were really positive. Oh, cool, you know, when can we talk? When can you give me the information? They were really positive, and the rest of it was kind of questions that a normal person would ask if you said, hey, I started doing something. And I thought, you know, the response, especially when somebody's new, the best thing that can happen is getting a positive response. And here's what's funny. Some people get a positive response, but they have their mind messed up so much, they get a positive response and don't even realize it's a positive response. They're like, yeah, I'll look at what you're doing, but I'm really not interested in doing it. And they're like, fine, I'm not showing you nothing. You know, that's what they say in their head. And I'm like, no, they just said that they would look at it. They're not going to do it. They might refer you. That was a great response. And they're like, yeah, but I really need to get somebody in or I'm not going to get to this level. Like you're an idiot. But at least you're talking to people, so, you know, you have a chance of making it. If you're not talking to anybody and you're just mad, you have no chance of making it. So we're at least kind of going in the right direction here. So number one, I would make a list of 10 people and help them. Here's what to send them. And then let me help you present, unless you think you can present this really good right now. And then I explained to them, I said, it's probably better if I present it rather than you present it. Here's why. How much money have you made in this so far? And they're like, I just got in, Jeff. You signed me up. I haven't made any money. Okay, good. Do you think your friends are going to ask you if you're doing this, have you made money? Well, yeah. And I'm like, so if you present it to them, they're going to ask you where you're at and how it's going, and you haven't done anything. And what do you think would come across better? Me showing them my check or you showing them no check? And they're like, probably you showing them your check. I said, because that's what excited you in the beginning, right? And they're like, yeah. And I said, so sometimes it makes sense to get people in front of the person that's actually made money doing it. Because when and I'll just give an example, when I first was looking at real estate and I went around to people, talking to people about real estate, and everybody that I had talked to about real estate was like, they had never made money in real estate, but they knew somebody who tried real estate who never made money, and that was the example that they wanted to talk to me about. And I'm like, well, have you ever met anybody that's made it? And I literally had people tell me this. They're like, well, nobody makes money in real estate. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would there be an industry of real estate if nobody makes money in real estate? Like, let's face it, that's not even possible. And I see things kind of matter of fact. And before I had read all the books and before I realized, not being nice wasn't winning friends and influencing people and, smiling and helping people out, I would call people out. I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, that doesn't even make sense. In fact, that's one of the dumbest comments I've ever heard. I will never ask you another question concerning money again. And that's how I talk. I mean, I'm not trying to be theatrical for this call. Like, I literally would say that to someone I knew. In fact, I think I told some teachers that. Like, in high school, when I went to talk to them about something, they would give me this, well, I've never met anybody. I said, well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever traveled outside the United States? No. I said, so really you have no idea what's over there because you've never been there, right? Yeah. I said, well, the same thing kind of makes sense if you've never been in business. You don't know what the hell you're talking about either. That did not get me good grades. It did not win friends and influence people. So I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but that's how I felt. So if you feel that way, I understand. Do not use my responses. Read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and use what they teach. Use what Dale Carnegie teaches instead. It's a much better way to deal with people. But I would get people started. The next thing I would do is I would try to get myself out of the way as fast as possible, and I'd have somebody else come in and tell their story, or basically what they liked or what they loved or what they saw in the business. If you want to know where your story fits into this, your compelling story fits in as a testimonial, and that's what you use on a third-party call or you use at the end of a meeting when, listen to this, write this down, when you're asked. When you're asked, do not jump in and tell your story when you weren't asked. You could actually completely lead the conversation in the wrong direction and screw up what somebody else is doing because you're so compelled to tell your story. I see this happen all the time with new people. When in doubt, say nothing. Smile. Agree. Shake your head, nod, that's cool. But, oh, let me tell you something else. I've watched people knock people out of the business because they were so interested in sharing their story. Look, that's somebody else's person. Follow the leader is kind of your best route there. So after I did that, then I realized the second step to this was staying in long enough. So that's why it's the second core commitment. And that's why, it's in the 10 core commitments, is staying in at least for a year, working, and Eric Worre actually recommends this. He's like, it's really going to take you a year, right, Bess? It's going to take you a year to kind of working, run into all the different weird scenarios to kind of really get a handle on this where you can, in most cases you not only will break even, but you'll probably be making some money. Not a ton. For some weird person, somebody might make a lot because of some weird circumstance. But in general, you can get in a legacy company, you can get in a new company, you can get in a medium company, meaning it's been around long enough where it's stable. It's not brand new. If you get in a solid company that has a good product, a good comp plan, and good people, in a year's of work, you should not only be able to break even, you should be able to make a little bit of money, and very few people will make a lot. Now, from there, and being in a year, I spent a lot of time collecting personal development and not using it, which That's not good. That's like signing up for a gym membership and paying for it for 10 years but never going. But here's what I did. Then I would be mad that I wasn't getting the results. I was like, that gym membership's doing nothing for me. Look, I'm still fat. In my case, I was still skinny. I had the opposite problem. You know, everybody has problems, you know. I was trying to gain weight and be more muscular, and everybody else was talking about losing weight, and I was like, I would love, and everybody's like, well, I'll give you some of my weight. I was like, that's not the weight I want. The weight I want kind of fits perfectly in place, doesn't hang there. I want the good weight. And, you know, that was a whole nother conversation to have with some friends. Again, I needed to read Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie and I hung out a lot once I figured it out. I was like, this guy is genius. I just wish I would have read the book when I bought the book. Instead, I bought the book more than once. I actually recommended it to people. I handed it out, but I hadn't read it. Once I read it, I was like, genius. So personal development is 3. 4 is market daily. You kind of have to be out there. So marketing daily is like contacting and inviting people. Marketing daily means you're putting stuff out. You have to put the right stuff out. You have to put the right stuff out. But if you're marketing daily and you put the right stuff out on Facebook and the right stuff out on LinkedIn and the right stuff out, you can produce basically a following, and a following will lead to questions, and the questions can lead to presentations. And the presentations lead to people getting in and buying product. So that's 4. 5 is present daily. You got to present every day. Are we on present daily or are we on presentation, weekly presentation? Weekly presentation, right? 6. Okay, weekly presentation. So present daily. Weekly presentation is next, and we'll get into some finite details. And then a weekly core training, showing up, being on time, sticking in for a year from now, always show up, always be positive at the events. You're not bringing your negativity. You're not bringing how your car broke down on the way. You're not bringing how this animal and that animal got sick. You're not bringing who's in the hospital. You're not bringing what medication you're on. You're not bringing all that stuff. Does that make sense? You're positive at the events. You always show up and you always stick with it. Then you look at, you know, attend a monthly regional. Same thing, always be there, always be on time. Always be positive. Always show up for a year. And then we look at conventions. You always want to attend your conventions. Conventions is a weekend where you lock yourself down and away from all the other junk, and you're able to absorb and listen, and you jump 6 months ahead at a time. Anybody that's ever attended a convention has always told me, I went, and I didn't think it was going to affect me the way it did. I went, it affected me much more than I thought. I was able to jump 6 months ahead of where I was. I was able to jump 6 months ahead in my programming, 6 months ahead in my philosophy, 6 months ahead in my identity of who I thought I was, 6 months ahead in my thinking, 6 months ahead in my programming, and my activity level went up. And that's what starts producing the results, the big results. In fact, I'll be real honest, I don't know anybody that's made a decent income inside of direct sales that hasn't attended big events. No one. No one. I've never met it. And I've been in multiple companies, and I've been around at least the United States, and I've been to South America having conversations about this, and I've been into Canada, and I've been into Mexico having conversations about this. I haven't been to Europe or Asia. So granted, I haven't talked to probably 7 billion of the 7.1 billion people that are on the planet. I haven't talked to all of them, and I haven't seen all the scenarios. But I'm just guessing. Big money, you won't see it happen. Got to attend the events. And last is a map, massive action plan. The massive action plan is absolutely positively important to map out where you're going every single month and be on track. Because if you're not mapping out where you're going and you're not on track, and you're not moving. So first of all, it's being on the right track, as my friend said. You can be on the right track, not moving, and still get run over by the train. So you want to be moving at the same time. So it's first getting on that track, knowing what your objective is. What are you trying to accomplish in what time frame? I've watched people try to give people instructions on what to do in the network marketing, and they're trying to get them to California, and they're starting in Indiana, and they're like, well, here's the road, here's this, here's this, here's this. And I've always found it interesting. I said, do you have a car? No. I was like, well, you know what? Before we map out where you're going, let's talk about getting a car. How are you going to get a car? Because it doesn't matter what road or what construction or where you're going to stay along the way. Like, none of that matters. Right now we need to focus on one thing and one thing only, getting a car if you plan on taking a trip. And the same thing is true, like, in all coaching. I try to, like, do they even have the basic things there to be able to accomplish the task at hand? And, you know, every single project I've ever seen in construction, I always look at it this way. If we're going to go build something, or we're going to go tear something down, or we're going to go put something together, do you have all the tools necessary before you start the project? That's kind of my rule of thumb, is ripping the project apart and going, okay, what needs to happen? Watch this. What needs to happen in what order to get you there? Because if you give somebody instructions but don't give them exactly the first things they need and even know to ask those questions, that's where I can see people are like, well, I got confused and I tried to start and I couldn't, you know, get the project off the ground. And I was like, really? Well, did you have a car? They're like, no. And I was like, well, how did you plan on getting there? They're like, I don't know. I was like, you guys never discussed the car? They're like, no. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start out by talking about a car if we're going to take a trip, right? You know, do you have gas money? That would be important, you know. Do you have enough money to leave your situation? You know, what are you going to do? You have pets? You know, what are you going to do with the pets? What are you going to do with the kids? They're like, I never even thought about it. I was like, that would be important, because in most places in the United States, if you leave the kids and the pets, they will lock you up for good, and then you'll be doing nothing, right? So just the important things. So that's what I have. Those are the 10 things that I learned. These 10 things I found work in every company. I found work with every comp plan. I found work with every team, every situation. As long as you have a good company that's financial backed, you have a great product or service that works, and you have a compensation plan that will pay you, you can take these 10 things and I can go into, watch this, I can go into any company and succeed. Any company. I don't care what company's out there, whether it's affiliate marketing, quote-unquote, just direct sales, if it's multi-level marketing, if it's hybrid, multi-level affiliate, blah, blah, blah marketing, all of the scenarios work. So that's what I have for the first part. I'm going to turn this back over to Bess before we get into the details of tonight, which is attend a weekly presentation and why.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. That was a huge lowdown, right? So this is the bare bones to shortcut your learning curve. And why learn this stuff first? Don Fala, when I interviewed him, the grandfather of network marketing, he's gosh, 1.5 million people on his team and wrote in a book, and I forget how many books he sold, but bestsellers in network marketing, 45-second presentation he wrote. And when I interviewed him, he said to sign up somebody and turn them loose is like giving a child the keys to a car before they learn to drive. They're going to wreck their warm market and turn them off and not know how to say anything to them. So even taking 90 days to get the basics under one's belt before you expect results, that's what another top earner friend recommends. You know, she says, just don't expect anything for 90 days. Invest yourself for at least 90 days to learn this. And you know, or up to a year, like Jeff said. So that's what we say, be here a year from now and the year after and the year after. Encourage people to think long term and to learn these things. After all, doesn't it, for another profession, doctor, lawyer, engineer, that doesn't even make as much money as network marketers can, they count on 4 to 10 years of school and apprenticeship and everything, plus the expense of it, you know, $60,000 to $100,000 for schooling and all that. So let's not be impatient in network marketing. Let's treat this professionally and encourage people to learn these basics. These are shortcuts to shorten your learning curve. Very few of your upline have this knowledge and this experience and know how to train like this. Very few companies can train like this because they are busy training on the products. So they can't really give this. And that's where we fill in the gaps that your upline or company might not have, is giving you these bare bones. Jeff really just tells it like it is because we want you guys to have the best results possible. So I'll turn it back to you, Jeff, for number 6, attend a weekly presentation.
Okay, can you hear me? So attending a weekly presentation, nothing but fun, right? Why? You know, the first question is what is a weekly presentation? The weekly presentation is basically the entire presentation, everything that someone would need to know to make an educated decision on moving forward with an opportunity. Most people's in the industry's presentation that I've seen will last anywhere between 20 minutes to about an hour, and there are some companies that try to marathon it where it's like 2 hours, 2.5 hours for a presentation. I would like to say that's too long, but some of those companies have amazing results, great people, and it just is the way it is. Every company's a little bit different. I think the ideal that I've seen in the industry for a full presentation that says everything that needs to say, with a host that says, hey, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We kind of have a unique situation. We've got an amazing person here in town. And a lot of times the speakers come from out of town. If it's a local meeting, say we have an amazing person who's locally here in town who has been very successful both inside the business and outside the business. So you're really covering about you'll hear the host cover 4 different things. And the reason they're going to cover 4 different things is you're going to have 4 different types of people sitting in the room. You know, this person knows 100% of the facts. So you're covering the C-type personality. This person knows 100% of the facts. This person loves people and loves to help people. You're covering the S-type personality, the people who are there maybe to support somebody. This person loves to have a lot of fun. So you're hitting the I-type personality, the inspirational people who like to be the life of the party, who want to be around the movers and the shakers, who like rubbing shoulders and elbows with other people who are doing stuff so that way they can go back and tell their friends, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe who I met. And this person's so cool and so exciting. And I learned about this business. And, well, how does it work? Well, I don't know. You'd have to come out to the meeting. And then the last type of person, the last person that they hit is this person has been very financially successful. They've achieved great levels in our company in a very short period of time. They have a massive, massive organization. So what you're doing is you're appealing to the D-type personality, somebody who wants to build something, somebody who wants to be in control, somebody who is attracted to success and money. Now, you might not be attracted to success and money, but trust me, you want people like that on your team. So the host's job is to basically set that up and cover those 4 things. If you don't cover those 4 things, here's what happens. The skepticism on the pie of, and I'm drawing a circle with my hands, which is stupid, but my point is that circle represents everybody in the room, and there's 4 quadrants. So anything you don't mention, there's an entire quadrant of people, or maybe 3/4 of the people. Because if the host gets up, and let's say the host is a fact person, which happens all the time, and this person will get up and be like, hello, my name is John Smith, and tonight we are going to see XYZ company, and I really enjoy being here. Basically saying I was talked into being the host because I was a friend of the person speaking. And this person knows all the details. Please listen very closely. Get out your pocket protector and your notebook and take notes like I am going to sit in the front of the room. Thank you. And it's very mechanical, and it only talked about the facts, right? So what happens is the skepticism of everybody else in the room goes up. Why? Because you only marketed to one, or you only introduced to one type of person. And I actually see this happen a lot in direct sales and network marketing. Because here's the thing, you're always usually going to introduce the opportunity or introduce other people first from your point of view. And most of us have a dominant point of view, and that's how we're introducing, watch this, everything we do, which is why you'll never connect with certain people until you learn this. Now, that's what the host job. The host job is basically going to do the introduction, and then the speaker comes up, and the first thing that a speaker would need to do at a weekly presentation, and I'm not necessarily trying to teach you what to do, but I'm trying to teach you what to identify in a meeting to know, because certain people don't even know if their meeting's good or not. They've only been to one meeting. They're like, I've never been to anybody else's meeting. I've never been to another meeting in my company. I've only been to the meeting that's local, so I wouldn't know a good meeting from a bad meeting. So the next thing is the job of the speaker is basically to introduce themselves, and if they can make you laugh, watch this, if they can make you laugh in the first 30 seconds, it's very hard not to like somebody that makes you laugh. It's very hard not to like them. It's very hard to be skeptical and remain skeptical with somebody that's entertaining and makes you laugh. And, you know, the best of the best can do this, and it's very easy, because that's why you're like, man, I went to see that guy, and it was just so entertaining. Right, it was entertaining. That's what the weekly meeting is for. It's for not necessarily just information, but it's for confirmation. So it's got to wrap the details and the feeling and the vision and everything else about the business all in one. It has to be clear. It has to be sort of concise. And I say sort of concise because some people are like, well, they could have said the exact same thing in a shorter period of time, which is true for the fact detail people. I'm a fact detail person, so when somebody drones on and on and on and on and on about all kinds of stuff that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, I tune out after about 40 seconds of that. And it's a problem I have. It's a problem. I have friends that have this same problem. It's like we have a very, very short attention span, so if you're not getting to the point or making a point and you're talking about how lovely your day was and everything else, I try to grasp the concept of what you're saying, but I just lose you. And you can see certain people in the room. If you're a good speaker, you can actually see certain of the people in the room, and their eyes glaze over, and all of a sudden they're like, attention's gone, I'm going to go, play with my phone. You can always tell somebody who's really amazing at speaking, especially nowadays. Look around the room. If everybody's on their phone and everybody's doing something else, you've lost them. If you have their attention, they're all leaning forward like, wow, and you grasp them. One of the ways to do this, if you ever want to be an amazing speaker trainer, one of the ways to do this is while you're presenting, ask people questions along the way and point at them. For instance, if I said, Bess, shake your head if you agree with me, and Bess shakes her head, she doesn't have in a live setting, she doesn't have a choice but to stop what she's doing. Here's what happens. Everybody else in the room starts paying attention because they're like, I don't want to get called on and not know what they're talking about. So you have the ability to hold people's attention by doing that. Short introduction. Hi, guys. Here's my background. Here's where I'm from. Two things. You want to go as relatable as possible by telling your story, but people relate to the pain more than the success. So if you want to engage with a group of people, and this is about the weekly presentation. I mean, I'm going into like crazy detailed depth to get you to understand what the weekly presentation is really doing and what it's for, by giving you some details of what a good speaker would do. But a good speaker is going to introduce themselves, and they're basically going to describe their scenario. One of the best I've ever seen at doing this has passed away. He was in one of the companies I was around. I wasn't personally on his team, but he came to Indianapolis a lot because he had a large organization here. And he would introduce himself, and he'd be like, hey, guys, my name is, and his name happened to be Dave. I'm not going to go into these details. He's like, hey, my name's Dave, and, and I'm just a normal guy. I grew up in Georgia. I got married to the girl down the street. He's like, when I met her when she was 5, and she was standing up in the back of her parents' pickup truck waving at me, and she was no taller than, the back of the pickup truck. He goes, the funny thing is, today, she's still that tall. And he gets everybody to laugh. I mean, everybody laughed. And he's like, and he's like, and then I went on to, you know, do some things in insurance, and then I became a football coach. He said, do we have any football fans in here? Now, if you go to any city in America and you have more than 20 people in the room and you say, do we have any football fans in here? You're probably going to have some football fans. He's like, I just want to let you know I'm a high school football coach, and I'm the most winning coach in Georgia. He goes, don't worry, you can't look it up anyway. You know, to prove me wrong, you can't look it up. There's no statistic on that. I just think I'm the most winning coach in football in Georgia. And again, people laugh. Why? Because he's kind of, you know, it's about him. He's like, I think I'm doing well, and I love kids. So he's kind of said, I love kids. I'm a family guy. I have this happen. And he's like, and along comes a business opportunity. My friend calls me about a business opportunity. He goes, so I don't know what you're thinking in the room, but I've been sold a lot of crap I can't use. How many of you would agree? Again, he asked a question where all of us have bought stuff we can't use. He goes, let me prove it to you. He goes, I will bet somewhere in either your house or your parents' house, there's a set of towels you're not allowed to use. He goes, they're probably in the bathroom, and you got to use them. Don't use those. Those are the guest towels. And even when the guests are there, the guests don't use them. They use the other towels. So you literally have bought towels that nobody uses, right? He goes, how many people have these towels? And a lot of the women will laugh. The guys are like, oh, yeah, I got yelled at for that. So, again, the relatability is amazing. So he goes, you guys have been sold a lot of crap that you can't use. He goes, let me prove it to you. How many of you have a socket set? And, you know, most of the people, you know, will raise their head. He goes, you guys have a socket set. He goes, let's be real honest. He goes, aren't there 2 or 3 of those little sockets that have never fit a single bolt in your whole life? He goes, if you can find a nut that fits that little one, you call me. I still haven't found one. And everybody laughs because you're like, it's true. I've never used that one. His relatability, again, is just freaking, it's so funny. So then he went on and he's like, so what I want to do is I want to kind of describe to you something that's actually useful, something that I've used. And he goes into basically telling the story of the company, and he starts telling about the product. And as he's telling stories about his particular company, his particular product, he'll weave in maybe 1 or 2 stories, you know, and some of the stories, again, it's about entertaining and making you laugh. I mean, he told this story. This is so ridiculous. He told this story. He was talking about technology, and he's like, you know, technology has gotten way too out of control. He's like, and you know, my friends convinced me to get a Bluetooth because I drive a lot and I shouldn't be on my phone and blah 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 blah. He goes, so I get a Bluetooth. He goes, now I speed and I do things. He goes, so I fly from Georgia out to the West Coast, and I'm supposed to drive from Washington. I think he was driving from Seattle down to Portland, which is like a couple-hour drive. He goes, and you get out on these back roads, and there is nobody out there. I mean, nobody. He goes, I'm the only light. The only thing I'm seeing is deer, you know, deer eyes and blah, 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 blah. And he goes, one night I'm out, and I'm traveling. It's late at night after the meeting. I'm driving back down, and he's like, I'm just flying down the street, and all of a sudden, he goes, wouldn't you know it, I see the flashing blue lights. He goes, has anybody ever had one of those almost heart attack moments where you're like, flashing blue lights, oh my gosh. He goes, so I'm like, you know, I look down, I'm going too fast, I pull myself over, and I sit there, and there's the flashing light again, and I'm waiting. He goes, and I'm sitting, and I'm waiting, and I'm sitting, and I'm waiting, and I'm sitting, I'm waiting, I'm sitting, I'm waiting. He goes, finally, I turn around. He's like, there's no car behind me. He looks the other way. There's no car. He's like, what in the world? And then he realizes that when his headpiece runs out of batteries, it starts flashing. He's like, I think I'm the only guy from the state of Georgia that's ever pulled himself over in the state of Washington for speeding. He's like, there was nobody there. There was never a police officer. He literally saw the flashing light in the rearview mirror from his Bluetooth. Guys, I mean, the first time he told me the story, I was crying. It was just, like, so ridiculous. He has a couple of these that, like, I remember. I really remember, like, jokes and stuff. So he has a couple of these. If you ever want me to, I can just go for, we'll just kind of skip all of the training, and I'll just tell all of his jokes. I don't want to do it tonight, but I'll just kind of weave them in as we go. it was hard not to like this guy. I'm not even a football fan. Like, I don't hate football. I don't dislike football. I'm not against football. I just have never really enjoyed the entire sport, like get into it like other people. And here's the thing, I even played. I haven't played. It just never affected me the same way. But I liked this guy. I was like, man, I'd love to just go watch a football game with this guy. That's just kind of the guy he was. And he goes on and he trains, and then he closes. He said, guys, here's the money. And he kind of showed, and he's like, and it was real relatable. He's like, if you do this and this, and you make this kind of money, he goes, that might be a car payment, right? He goes, how many people's car payment is about this amount? And people would raise their hand, like, this high, like, yeah, that's kind of like my car payment. He goes, so this would pay for your car payment? And people are like, yeah. He goes, so what if you had your normal job and your money, and then you had this, and it paid for your car payment? How would that make you feel? And people are like, yeah, pretty good. I mean, that would be, he's like, could you see that happening? And people are like, yeah. And then he went up a little bit more, and then it would get to like, 11 or 1,200. I can't remember what he was showing on his chart. And he said $1,200. He goes, how many people have a house payment that's around $1,200? And a couple other people are like, yeah. He's like, same scenario. What if you had your job and you had this extra? And people are like, yeah, that would totally make sense. And then he went up to like, I can't remember, it was $2,000, $2,500, and he goes, $2,000. He goes, now, if that was a month, $2,000 is pretty decent. He goes, but what if it was a week? He goes, how many people, if you started earning $2,000 a week, how many people would go in and quit their job? And everybody, I mean, people raise their hands. If you were making $2,000 a week, you'd go in and quit your job. He goes, do you have your speech prepared? He goes, do you know who you'd visit before you left? And people are like, yes. It was amazing how he built people into the plan as he did it. Now, what I learned from him is he wasn't just a presenter. He was a master at all of this. He was a master at clarity. He was a master at brevity. He only went for about an hour. I mean, it was on the dot. I watched it. I timed it every time. 55 minutes to an hour every time, regardless of what happened. One time, they lost his luggage on the way there. They lost the luggage. It was summer. He shows up, and normally this guy was suit and tie because this was a profession that made sense to be suit and tie. If your business is a suit and tie, it doesn't matter. But he shows up, and he has flip-flops, some shorts, and a Hawaiian shirt on. And he just kind of laughed, and he's like, hey, this is what you get. And they're like, do you want to go to the store? He's like, nah, in the past I've done that before. And then you got some weird belt size, and we're stapling the, the cuffs at the bottom of the suit. He's like, that doesn't, he goes, nobody cares. He's like, I'm just going to be me, He's like, I make enough money where I'll make it work for you. So here's the first thing he did. He goes, how many people have ever flown and lost something? And everybody's like, oh, yeah, how many people have ever moved and lost? How many people have ever forgotten something at home? It was so relatable right off the bat. Everybody's like, yeah, I like this guy. He goes, guys, I'm supposed to be in a suit and tie, and instead you get me in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts because the airline, I'm not going to mention their name. I won't say Delta who they are, but Delta lost all my – and, I mean, I was crying in the front row. I was like, man, I hope this is a tape because Delta is going to have a lot to explain. So, like, we're so sorry. He goes, I get thousands and thousands. He goes, I'm one of the elite member, blah, 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 blah. So I'm sure they'll help me out and give me a free flight somewhere. So when he was done, people were just like, I literally heard people like, I don't even know how this works, but I want to sign up. I just want to be around this guy. I just want to meet people. I want to be involved with people like this, because what I found is in life, you don't run across a lot of people who have that kind of vision. You don't run across a lot of people that have that energy and that dream and that positivity. And, a lot of people are looking for that in life. So what I learned from him in particular was relatability, because I could be funny, but I was funny but not as relatable as him. So what I tried to do is become more relatable. Now, what is the presentation for? The presentation is basically for information, yes, but it's for confirmation that what somebody else showed me, what somebody else taught me or shared with me is not only true, but now here's the rest of the information to back it up. It's the proof, right? That's number one. Number two is, okay, so that's what the presentation is for. It's for that. Who is it for? It's for the 4 personality types. It's to fill in the gaps between what you know and what you showed them and what they need to tip them over the edge to make a decision. Now, a lot of people think the weekly meeting is actually for the guests, and I'll tell you that that's not the main objective, and this freaked me out. The main objective of the weekly meeting is actually for the organization that's already signed up. And I heard this so clearly from one of my mentors. He said, the reason we have a weekly presentation is to sell the dream back to the team. I was like, oh, man, that's good. To sell the dream back to the team. The team that's already in. He's like, we know that 7 days a week you are fighting against programming and a system that basically is telling you this won't work. He goes, we want to get together weekly to tell you it will. I was like, man, that is like genius powerful. Like monumental powerful, right? So that's who it's for. It's actually for, you're not going, so a lot of people get upset and they're like, well, I'm not going to go to the weekly meeting because I don't have somebody there. If you don't have somebody, you need the weekly meeting. But watch this. If you have somebody, the weekly meeting needs you. Because what happens if somebody else has somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, I really want to go to the weekly meeting this week because my person would relate so well to Rich, or my person would relate so well to Bess, or my person would relate so well to Monica, or my person would relate so well to Tammy, or Wisseth, or, you know, Becky. My person would relate so well to their background and their situation. My person would relate to William and Stephanie and their situation. Because I really don't know anybody else. My people would relate to Lisa, or my people would relate to Jim and being outdoors and having a, you know, working outside with animals or with bees. You know, maybe, you know, they have a farm and at least it's somewhat relatable. I work in the city. There's no relatability. Does it make sense? So that's what the weekly meeting's for. Now, how are you supposed to be in your weekly meeting? What I've always found is, A, yes, you want to show up before the meeting. You also want to put all of your negativity. Don't bring any of that into the room. That's not the conversation. If you want to have a conversation, is it probably smart to start a conversation about politics out in the hall before you walk into the meeting? Probably not. You know, is it smart to talk about the latest, greatest, horrible thing that's happened on the news because they like to, you know, that's, oh, breaking news, you know, you're still alive, it's amazing. Or, you know, this happened or that happened. I mean, is that the stuff that you want to be talking about in the meeting? No, that's not going to help you recruit people. In fact, it's going to work one way or another. People are going to be like, yeah, I saw that too. And then the whole conversation and everything we're talking about is about bad stuff that's happening in the world and who hates who and why they hate and what TV show and, you know, what actor superstar is for this or that. That's not going to help you. I mean, I love what Jim Rohn said. Jim Rohn's like, if these people get power, what's that going to mean to your business? Probably not much. He's like, what if we give power to the other side? He's like, is that going to make a lot of sense? He's like, probably not. He's like, whether this side or that side, he's like, what are you going to do? Quit worrying about what side is where and who has office. The only office you should be worried about is your office, your home office. Because regardless of look, people have succeeded under worse circumstances in the world. And I know we got people on here from even different countries, so that was very relatable to what's going on right now in the United States. But I found out it's also going on in Canada. And I found out it's also going on in Brazil. And I found out it's also going on in parts of Europe. So I don't know about Asia. I'm still learning about Australia, but I'm learning these things, trying to learn outside of just our market because I know we're teaching to a much larger audience now. So I hope that's relatable for everybody. But that's not what we want to talk about. What is a good thing to talk about? The best thing that I've ever found to talk about, and this is really cool, is stop by a really cool furniture store, stop by a really nice car dealership, stop by and dream build in new homes, and bring a dream, watch this, bring a dream to the meeting. Bring a dream to the meeting. I would stop by the car dealership, I'd just stop by BMW, and I'd find somebody in the room that liked BMW. I was like, man, I just went to the BMW, and I just looked, and I just drove this 6 Series car. And you might hate cars, that's fine. But typically there's somebody there that likes those kind of cars, and I'd be like, oh, yeah, I just went, are you familiar with this? Oh, my gosh, that guy's like, I know everything about this car. I love that car, and this, I know. Well, what color would you get? You know, how many wheels would you have? I mean, I know that's a dumb question, but you see what I'm saying is I'm just talking to them about what they like. The next week I would go home, shopping. And there's a lot of new homes being built. So I'd stop by maybe 1 or 2 of the big builders, and I'd get maybe, back then they had a magazine of all builders. I know it's all online now, but certain places still have brochures and stuff. I was like, yeah, I just stopped by this neighborhood, up in this, exclusive area, and it's gated, and it's blah, 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 blah. And certain people will be like, I don't want to learn about and hear about and blah, 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 that. That's fine that you don't, but there's somebody in the room that's still dreaming. Stop by a travel agent, and I would pick one for the West, like out Wild West. I was like, oh my gosh, you can go to this ranch, and you can ride horses, and you can be in the dirt, and you can kiss a rattlesnake. And then I'd get another one of Disney World, and what you could do at Disney World, look at the hotels, and the Beach and Yacht Club, and the Dolphin, and the Swan, and now they have the Contemporary that they're redoing, which is good because Contemporary is supposed to be modern, and it was old, which didn't make any sense, so they had to bring it into the future. And then there's the new, what's the newest park that they have there? The Animal Kingdom, where you can like eat breakfast and watch zebras and giraffes walk by. I mean, amazing. Epcot, the giant ball at Epcot, which everybody knows has been turned into the Death Star. I would also grab some stuff, maybe like Harry Potter, because kids it's Halloween time, so kids might be into that. I just found out that Harry Potter is a Christmas movie. I was like, what are you talking about? I wanted to punch somebody the other day. They were arguing with this, and they were like, well, every single one they have Christmas, and if Christmas is mentioned, then it's absolutely a Christmas story. And I was like, so Die Hard is a Christmas story. And they're like, no, I don't think so. That's a gun, shoot 'em up story. And so we had this huge argument over, is Harry Potter a Christmas story or more Halloweenish? I don't care. I'm watching it. It's Halloweenish. I have it right here. I've been watching it. I'm on disc 5, which is Year 5, The Order of the Phoenix. That's where I'm at. And you might hate that. You might be against it. I don't know. I'm not trying to convince you what to do. I'm just saying, if it were in a category, it should be for Halloween. So always show up. Always be consistent with showing up. Dress the part. What I can say is, ladies and guys, check yourself. You might want to do the mirror check, make sure everything's in place. Earrings, this, that, and the other thing, coat, jacket, smile, check the teeth. You don't want to walk in, because I ate a lot of salads at one point, and, walked in, and I was the speaker, and I got, like, this green tooth, and nobody said anything for, like, until right before I went on. They're like, I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. They're like, you have green stuff all over your teeth. I'm like, nobody's told me this up until right now. I've just talked to 15 guests. I got all this, like, so I'm like, I ran to the restroom and, check the teeth. Nails, guys, if it looks like you've been digging in the dirt and trying to find china, something to look at. And I love how Mr. Kelly actually pointed out certain people. He actually pointed out Rich in the room. He's like, I can tell that you take care of the cut that you have, the haircut you have is very modern. It's very sharp. You have to keep up with that. He's like, I can tell that. He's like, Jeff, you need to comb your hair or something. He didn't tell me that, but like you can just see certain people in the room. And he's like, I can tell when somebody has it together So guys, check nails, and clean hands is good. Sometimes you got to tell the ladies this too. Normally not. That's more of a guy thing. Closed-toe shoes for guys is usually better than flip-flops. I'm just letting you know that because nobody wants to see some of the things that are crawling outside of a flip-flop, shoe-wise. And I think one of my speakers said it best. If it's a suit and tie kind of organization, go with the more solid business-like colors. He goes, if the color of your suit also matches an exotic fruit, it's probably not the right color for business. You know, if you have a zucchini-colored suit, if you have an avocado-colored suit, if you have, you know, a passion fruit-colored suit, that's probably not the right color. You know, go with the blues, the blacks, the tans. Make it that season. Make sure it's your size, guys. Guys aren't as sharp on this. Sometimes, ladies, if you see this, you might need to pull them aside. It was really weird for me to get to a point where I was coming up and I was watching the leadership come up and they were dressing wrong, and I was like, I need to have a conversation that's so weird for you because I've never been in a situation where I've ever needed to tell another guy, you need to dress differently. Like, do you know what's going on here? And they're like, what are you talking about? I was like, do you own a suit? They're like, no. I said, you've never even been suit shopping, have you? And no. I said, do you even know where to go? They're like, no. And I'm like, I'm gonna tell you where to go. We're gonna go grab lunch, and we're gonna go over to this place, and I'm gonna introduce you to a guy. He's a tailor. He's been in the industry for years, and he can kind of tell you, because that's not what I do. Like, I don't know either. I have a good eye for it and background, both for girls and guys. I'd be like, that color's wrong. It's the wrong shape, because there's about 4 different shapes for women and about 4 different for guys. Their structure, what looks good, what doesn't. I have a weird ability, like I could figure that out before I took classes in it, but I actually took classes called EIT training, Executives in Training, and it was kind of like hairstyle that goes with, and it's funny that I'm in t-shirts most of the time, but that's like my business now. But before, when I was in real estate and mortgage, I was typically in a suit, and that's what I wore. But being able to identify that. So you want to walk in the room and look right is my point. I always was told to dress 1 step sharper than guests. So if guests are dressed in slacks and a shirt for a guy, I'm wearing a tie. If the guys are in a shirt with a tie, I'm wearing a jacket with it, a suit. Does this make sense? I'm just 1 step above. Look sharp, look crisp. You know, if you don't know what starch is, if somebody looks all wacky, you just talk to somebody about that. There's shows out there. What do they call that? The Swan, where they just dress them up and fix them. So, association, duplication. Where do you want to sit? The money seats in a meeting are up front. The money seats are up front. The closer you are to the front, the more money usually you're making. When we're new and we're inexperienced and we have no idea, we sit in the back and we kind of clown and, you know, joke around on everything. And, you know, I asked one friend of mine that's a speaker, I was like, what's the weirdest thing you've ever had happen in a meeting? He's like, oh my gosh, I was speaking in the South. I don't remember exactly where. The room was packed. The heat was, I think it was in Georgia. The heat wasn't, or the air conditioning wasn't working exactly right. He goes, so it was already warm because you got the lights, and then you pack a bunch of people in a room. By the way, for every person that's inside of a room, you add about half a degree of temperature. So if you get 50 people in a room, it can actually increase the temperature 20 degrees really quick. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, and this is a good question to ask. You know, I asked this in a leadership room. I said, should the room be warm or cold? And, you know, half the room said, you know, and typically this is true. The female said a little bit warmer, and the guys were like, I don't care. The room actually technically should be cold. Colder. Not freezing. Like, your water shouldn't have frost on it, is what I'm saying. But it should be colder. Why? If a room heats up, you tend to get tired. It's just how it works. The room should be colder. So for those of you, dress appropriately if you know that's true. Does that make sense? Because if the whole time you're complaining about how cold it is, or the whole time you're complaining about how hot it is, that's affecting everybody else around you. So temperature, it's dumb that we even have to talk about this, but that is conversations that people start having. Oh my God, it's so cold in here. I can't believe they keep it this cold. This is an opportunity to make money, and you're worried about the temperature. Some people are in here trying to pay rent and put their kids in school, and you're worried about the 4-degree difference. Bring a coat. There was a rule that if I saw you touch the temperature, because I realized that was happening at one point, people were trying to turn it up because they were cold. I said, I just want to let you know if I physically catch you doing this, I'm throwing you out of this room and you're never able to come back regardless of what pin level you're at. Because you're messing up everybody else's money because of 4 degrees. Bring a jacket. That's how serious it is. The weekly meeting, guys, the weekly meeting is the hub of your business. It's the hub of your business. You have to control the atmosphere and everything in it and around it. And if you see something that needs to happen, it's best just to say, hey, I'll volunteer, I'll help out. In the beginning, when I was new and I didn't know any better and I started realizing what was wrong, I thought I was being real smart, being sarcastic and pointing out what was wrong, but not helping. What I realized is the people who make the most money always jump in and are servants. They're going to serve the marketplace. Because I wasn't getting anything back, I was one of those people that was like, when that fire gives me heat, I'm going to give it wood and a match. Does that make any sense? No, that's dumb. It was all about me. I was about being selfish rather than serving. When I started, watch this, when I started serving, my income went up. I started learning all the lessons when I was helping people. And I helped people for a long time. How can I get there early? Can I help you put out the chairs? Can I get a new person a glass of water? Can I help a new person find what they're looking for? Do you need a computer to sign in? What are you trying to find? What are you trying to do? Where are you trying to park? Just whatever I could help with, I tried to help. And when I started helping and I showed up early and I stayed late, all of a sudden I started hearing things I didn't hear before. When I sat closer to the front, I started seeing things I didn't see before. I started catching all the little 1% things. Why? Because I wasn't screwing around in the back with the people that weren't making any money. And then I heard this. Whoever has the laser pointer or the marker in the room is the one making the most money. I was like, I was like, how do I get one of those laser pointers? That was my goal, was to get there, or the marker. So I came weekly. I had a good attitude. I was consistent. I was dressed right. Bring a notebook. I sat on the edge of my chair. When I first went, I would sit like this, like I was at home, legs V, like hanging out, like I was in the lazy boy in the back, like this, just hanging out, looking cool, making no money. My friends were next to me making fun of the stuff too. They were making no money too. We were all hanging out in the back being cool, you know. And then I would look at all the people up front that were in their suit and ties, and we'd make fun of them a little bit, and they'd have their notebook, be like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, you've heard this joke before and you're still laughing? Oh, tell the other one, tell the other one. You know, that my friends were like heckling the speakers. No, tell the other joke, it's way better. Oh, yeah, that's going to make a lot of money and help out. Eventually, thank goodness, one of the guys is like, hey, Jeff, you're a pretty smart guy. I'm like, I got a question for you. He's like, the people in the front of the room are at a higher level, and the people in the back of the room aren't making any money. Have you noticed that? I'm like, yeah, I have noticed. He's like, have you noticed who you've been sitting with? I'd be like, yeah, I've been sitting in the back. He's like, with the people with no money? Yeah, I think I have. He's like, have you noticed the people up front are dressed a certain way and have their hair a certain way? Yeah, I have. Like, everybody that stands up and does their testimony. Didn't you tell me you wanted to do your testimony? Yeah, I want to do my testimony. He's like, I can't have you do your testimonial looking like that. Oh. Well, there's a revelation. I thought, see, for some reason I thought they would tell me that I was going to do a testimonial. Then I'd go get a suit and dress right, and then I'd be up front. He's like, no, you have to do that consistently to even be worthy of us calling you up. I was like, Oh, that's how. See, I was dumb. I just didn't know. I've never been taught I've never had been taught any of the business etiquette of how the business world works. I've been taught how the screw-ups do it. Because I watched screwed up movies, and I watched screwed up people, and I was in class with screwed up things. And that's all I knew. I didn't know that there was this other world of how things worked. So I just started learning. And I was like, and he put it real simply. He's like, Jeff, anybody can learn this. Anybody can. He's like, but you have to be around the people who are teaching it. And he's like, the worst thing in the world is to be in the room where it's being taught and being so preoccupied with other stupid people that you miss it. And I was like, well, that was a lesson. That was $1 million lesson that I should have gotten before. So, guys, with that, I am going to wrap that up with that saying that I was an idiot for a long time. And when I got that stuff right, it's amazing how the business started to explode for me. I showed up. That was the only thing I did right, is I did show up. I showed up wearing the wrong clothes. I showed up saying the wrong things. I showed up sitting the wrong way. I showed up late. I left early. I mean, I did so many things wrong. The only saving grace is I kept going. I kept going, and eventually I learned these lessons over time screwing up, and then finally it was like all of the times I'd been there started compounding. And when the lessons started compounding, I started figuring stuff out. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Bess so she can wrap it up before we need to basically end this training session recording. But we're going to stay on longer because I'm sure people are like, wow, I've never heard some of this, have questions. We're going to answer anything that you have, and we'll be on for a while. Hold on one second. Bess, back to you.
That was rich. That was powerful. I got many, many notes. So what you did right was that the 4 things we say for every event, right, for the weekly presentations and the weekly core training and the monthly regional and the company conventions, always 4 things. Always show up, always be consistent, always have a good attitude, and be here a year from now. So you did those 4 things, even though you messed up with other stuff. And thanks for telling stories on yourself, because we can all relate to that. We're all learning. And that's good. So you always showed up. You were consistent. You had a good attitude because you could take the coaching. You were coachable. You could hear those suggestions. And I love the light bulb that went off. And you be here a year from now, and after that, and after that. So it is a paradigm shift for everyone. We're all growing into it and stepping into it and learning it. My biggest takeaways right now was, if I'm not going, so I'm not bringing anyone, that's when you need to be there. And if you are bringing someone, then the meeting needs you. So if you're not bringing anyone, you need the meeting. If you are bringing someone, the meeting needs you. And that's because people's prospects may not relate to them. Your prospect may not relate to you, but they may relate to the collective crowd of people there. There's somebody there that maybe they can. And it's cool. It's like, okay, if you're not an attorney, but you're talking to an attorney, and you say, well, I'm not one, but guess what? There's going to be an attorney there at the meeting who I'd love to introduce you, because he's been real successful with his network marketing business. And, there's social proof right there of somebody who's done it, somebody just like them who's done it. So especially if you know that that's one reason to attend regularly, because maybe people can count on you being there and be able to introduce a new prospect to you. So be regular if you can, and let your teammates count on you. That's training you for success, grooming you for success, and being a leader there. So if you know someone's going to be there, or if you know an attorney on the team, you're not sure if he's going to be there, say, are you going to be there so I can introduce this person to you, of the same profession or whatever. And then they can tell them, well, this is how I began it, and this is how long it took me, and this is what I did, and this is what I plan to do. Because, a lot of professions, they are not going to retire at the lifestyle that they want. And James Kelly, one of our speakers this past week in Indianapolis, mentioned he happened to be a barber. But he goes, well, how many, engineers or barbers or any profession do you know who are going to retire at a lifestyle that they want to be. So many people spend years and money and everything getting to these professions, and then they realize they want to get out of them. And those are the people that you see at the meetings who are working their way out of these professions. So a lot of times people can skip that, going through that step, and go right into network marketing, something that will be more rewarding for them and bring the greatest return of investment of any business in the world. So bringing people for the social proof, to meet others just as you know, like them perhaps, who have done it and made it and can tell them how they did it, huge advantage to you. So that's why working in groups helps you leverage your time. Meetings make money. That would be the bottom line here. Meetings make money. Another example is, what if you plan to do a private presentation for someone in a restaurant? Bring your team along. Invite your team to come along as training, or invite them to bring people too. So then you have a group, which increases the energy. And it starts to heat up and speed up. It's much better than if it's just one-to-one. You always invite people along. And it's good training, increases the energy, gets greater results, and people seated nearby may even overhear it. So you've just accomplished a lot by doing things in a group. Now, how do you get people there? The best way is to tell your team, you know, if you want them to come to weekly presentations, I'll be there. And another little tip I have is to give them a job. Like, would you pick up so-and-so, another member of our team, on the way? They need a ride. Would you bring the ice? Because now they have a job. Now they have less reason to opt out or you know, get discouraged at the last minute and say, oh, something came up, you know, the dog threw up in the house and I have to clean it up, so I'm not going to go to the meeting now. But if you give them a job, then they're more likely to show up because somebody's needing them to do something. They're dependent on them. And I think Jeff mentioned this, but if you're on time, you're late. If you're early, you're on time. So as best we can, doing the best we can, try to be early, because stuff happens. You meet people, actually, and you get to have conversations that you wouldn't otherwise at any event, and staying after too. So and volunteering and helping, of course, it's fun. I have belonged to organizations that it just isn't as much fun. I just do it for my own selfish reasons, because it's more fun to help out than it is not to, than to be just a participant or just receive. It's more fun to give in any way that I can. It's more exciting to me. But this also shows people around you that, you know, maybe they can give you a job greeting people, or maybe even being the host next time, or giving you part of the presentation to do. So you are setting yourself up for being part of the presentation. If you see members on your team do this, groom them, help them to step up, help them, everybody, to take their next step, whatever it is. Be on the lookout and say, now, what would that person's next step be? They're doing this, they're setting up chairs, and maybe they could greet people at the door next time. Maybe they could be the host or the MC next time. So see how you can raise them, you know, raise them just a step beyond where they are, as a good nurturer, as a good gardener of your team, nurturer of your team. That's all that I have for right now.
All right, guys. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap that up. Thank you so much for attending. And then what we'll do is we'll stay on after, but we wanted to wrap up this recording, as always, next week, same place, same time, and this Wednesday, Leadership University for those who are joining us. Thank you so much.